Hey guys, John here, and I am getting back into the swing of things with my tutorials. And what I'm going to be starting with is just the very basics of Unity. And as we progress, we're going to get into scripting basics, some more advanced scripting, and hopefully, eventually, we'll just create a game. So basically, right as soon as you open up Unity, this is roughly what you'll see. I've opened up the Angry Bots project that Unity brings along with it. But so yeah, if you open the Angry Bots project, this is exactly what you'll see. So we have the layout here, including our scene window, our game window, our hierarchy project, and the inspector. And you can rearrange these however you want. And you can drag them, you can have them as floating windows, whichever you like. Whatever works for you. And if you screwed things up and you want to go back to your regular layout, there's default options up here. I personally prefer tall. And it'll quickly just bring everything back to the way it was. And if you find that you like a layout, like you drag your windows around and you like it a certain way, you can save your own layout. And then we'll just call it Totally Awesome. And yeah, you can choose that layout whenever you want. Alright, so the first view here is the scene view. And this is basically how you're going to be setting up your levels, manipulating things, and basically just where you build your game. From the scene view, you can click and drag things, move them around, you can rotate view, and you can also change visually how everything looks within the level. Not something you'll see in the game, but something to help you debug and figure out where issues are. Over here where it says textured, you can change these to a wireframe view, textured and wireframe. You can view which render paths, so like forward rendering, deferred rendering. We'll get to that in a later tutorial. And also the light map resolution. So when you're building light maps, this is how detailed the light maps will be on these objects. But usually you just want to keep it on textured. And the next is RGB. This is basically just viewing things normally, the RGB values of the textures. If you switch to alpha, it'll tell you how alpha'd these objects are. Completely white means that they're totally see-through. Black, not so much. Overdraw lets you see which objects are being rendered over top of each other. This is useful later in the game, where you basically, it helps you figure out where the camera's going to be doing a lot of work, because even though objects are behind something and you can't see them, the camera still has to render them. So if you have, say, like 100 or 200 objects just layered over top of each other, the camera still has to do all of that work to render everything. And that can be a bit of a problem, especially on mobile devices. And the last one is the mid maps. And this basically just shows you basically how detailed the texture is going to be at the current view. So when it's red, it's basically telling you that from this view, there's not going to be a lot of detail here. Basically, the textures on the objects are too detailed for the view. As you move in, they'll start to turn blue, which means that they aren't detailed enough, and you'll start to see stretching. Like, as you move in, you'll see that the textures start to get really blurry because there's not enough detail there. So it's basically just telling you at which point things are visually pleasing. Right here, there's really no shading, and everything looks nice and sharp, and yeah, you get what I mean. With Unity 4, you also get the 2D view. You can just swap back and forth. Basically, it just turns it into an orthographic view. The next one is all the lights. If you turn them on and off, don't really notice much here because it seems like all the lights are already baked. Yeah, all the lights in this level are already baked, so you're not really going to notice much of a difference. But if all the lights were dynamic, it would turn them on and off. And the next one toggles audio, so you can hear the audio or not, wherever the camera is. Just if you want to kind of preview how things are going to sound in the level from the editor without having to hit play. And you can also choose which effects are going to be displayed. You can turn these off or toss them back on, whichever really fits your need. Most of the time I don't have these on because once you get a lot of effects going, it starts to slow the editor down. So it's good for previews, but for the most part I just kind of keep it off. And the last one over here is gizmos, and basically you see all these little light things, or what looks like speakers, just things that are visually in the editor, telling you where objects are. So if we let's see here, turn the light off. Nope. Alright, apparently didn't do anything. Cool, never mind. Anyways, the gizmos are basically just things that show up in the editor, allow you to view them a lot easier within the level, and yeah, that's pretty much what they're there for. It's for debug stuff and just figuring out where stuff is. Easy enough. The next view is your game view, and this is what the in-game camera is going to be seeing. So when you hit play, today, let's go today. But this is going to be the view of the in-game camera. Yeah, see, we go right into it. And here, there's not really a whole lot of things to see. You can change the aspect ratio of the camera. You can view simple statistics like draw calls and how much time the processor is taking. So you can see some pretty useful stuff there, but yeah, that's pretty much it. The hierarchy here is how your level is specifically set up. So let's see here. We'll just create a cube really quickly, and you'll see it show up in the hierarchy. And if you hit F in the scene view, it focuses on the currently selected object. I forgot to mention that earlier. Okay, so in the hierarchy, basically it lets you parent objects, and when you parent objects, you can move around multiple ones at the same time. So if we create another cube, where did this one go? Oh, same position. Alright, awesome. We can parent objects, or make them children of each other. And now, if I move the child around, moves like normal, but if I move the parent around, you move both objects at the same time. And this is useful for grouping objects in your scene, even if it's not to move around, but just to organize your levels, so you can reference objects really quickly. For example, in the hierarchy here, it has the environment split up into static objects, all the sounds, semi-static objects, which is basically the objects that are they're labeled as static for light maps, but they still move around. And then the completely dynamic objects, which will be most likely the enemies and elevators and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the hierarchy. You can also search for specific objects too, so if we're looking for all the rain objects or whatever, we can find everything that starts with rain. And within the search, you can also search by type. So if I'm looking for lights or anything like that, anything that has a light attached to it will show up in the search. Now the project view here is basically all the assets for your project. So all of your models, your textures, materials, all that good stuff that you use to actually create your game is going to be located here. So let's see here. Go to objects, environment, corporate chair. Sure, why not? And we'll bring a chair in. And has its materials, so we'll just toss its materials on there. Maybe not. Those materials don't look like they do anything. Anyways, so this is basically where you organize your project and you drag and drop your assets into the game. Unity 4 introduced this new view where you see previews of all the objects. I'm personally not a big fan of it. I liked the old view better, where it was just here on the left. And if you want the old view back, you can just right click and go to one column layout, and it organizes everything like the old folder structure way, which I found a lot more useful. I feel like the new view just kind of slows things down if I'm looking for something specific. Yeah, the project view also has a search function where you can do the exact same thing. If you're looking for your chairs, you can also search for specific objects. So if you want all your fonts, all your prefabs, you can just do a quick search that way. Yeah, that's a pretty basic overview of the project view. And the last one here on the right is the inspector. And basically anything that you select has an editor for it where you can manipulate it in some sort of way. So if you want to set a specific position or a specific rotation, fiddle around with some of the components on your object, you can do that all from the inspector. And once you start getting a little bit better at scripting, you can create your own custom inspectors too, to make things nice and fancy. Your own custom inspectors can basically do whatever you want them to do. I personally have had a lot of experience with these custom inspectors. Creating like a custom interface, for example. Creating custom inspectors for that is very handy. It speeds up the entire process. That's just one quick example of inspectors. And yeah, these are your basic 5 or 6 windows that you're going to be using the entire time you're making a game. There are multiple other ones. I'll go into those in another tutorial. I don't want to overload you guys with information on the first one, but this is basically a really quick intro to Unity. How to manipulate objects, what the views do, and yeah. Before I forget, if you're looking to manipulate objects in the scene view, up here at the top, there's multiple different, basically, tools for for manipulating objects. Right now I have the movement tool selected. If I click what looks like 2 arrows, now I can rotate the object. And the last one lets you scale the object. And yeah, these are going to be something you use pretty much constantly while manipulating the scene. You can also choose whether or not you want to manipulate on the pivot or the center of the object, and if you want to use local space or world space. So if you choose pivot, whatever model you have that you're manipulating, the 0, 0 point of that model is going to be known as the pivot, and it'll rotate around that specific point. If you choose center, it finds the bounds of the entire object and it'll rotate around that. The bounds seem pretty big on this object, but the collider's pretty big. But yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. If you're rotating something and it seems like it's rotating a little funky, you might want to double check and make sure it's set on the right mode. And with local position or world or global, it's basically just the space that you're rotating and moving in. So global, for example, the X, Y, and Z are always the exact same, no matter which way you rotate it. But as soon as you change it to local, you can maneuver it in the direction that it's facing. So if I wanted to rotate it this way, and if I go back to moving the object around while it's in local position, you'll see that the movement tool isn't facing the same direction it was in global space. So you have to keep that in mind as well while you're maneuvering objects. But yeah, I think that's good for now. We will go into some of the stuff another time. Some of the other windows like profiler and animation windows. But yeah, before I ramble on, that's it for now. So, bye bye.